Hey everyone, what's up? Welcome back to the Conflict of Nick channel. I'm your host Nick, and this is going to be the next video of the Conflict of Nations every unit in the game tier making list. It's a multi-part series, so stay tuned for every part. Links to previous parts will be down in the description, and links to future parts, if they are already uploaded, will be uploaded in the description later on as well. I hope you guys enjoy the video. Please subscribe to my channel if you want to. It really helps me grow. And that's all. Enjoy the video. Next up, we have a unit that I don't use very often, but use a lot and have used a lot in the past. It's going to be the Heavy Bomber. This is the second heavy aircraft we're talking about in this video, and honestly, it depends really on what your situation is. Again, heavy bombers are best in the Western Doctrine. They do very heavy damage against infantry or light targets, can do some to armor, though not as much as infantry obviously. You can get up to 16 with a max level Western bomber. They ignore bunker bonuses or defense bonuses that you get at max level, and they're a slow speed unit, but they have so much range they can basically get anywhere on the map. What they're good for is destroying infrastructure mainly, and getting behind the lines, going after a nation that's an ocean away or across the map that you wouldn't be able to get to normally. And really, if you can use them correctly and keep them out of harm's way and get them to their target fast, you can deal a lot of damage, set your opponent back very, very far, and also kill infantry very effectively. They're going to be very slow and vulnerable though, so don't get them caught out anywhere where you think that they can get singled out by enemy aircraft. Have them always guarded by ASF or anti-aircraft, and always be utilizing them to destroy infrastructure and infantry units. Don't waste a bomber attack on armor or anything that they're not meant for, because obviously if you're having them at a faraway airfield like you usually probably will, then they're going to take a long time to go back to base, refuel, and come back. So use their attacks wisely. Overall, I'd say they're not bad. They're not great, but they're not bad. They're decent at what they do, and really the only big downside is that you can cause a lot of civilian casualties if you're not careful, and your morale can go down pretty fast. But bombers are pretty good, and I would put them at a B tier for bomber because they're just decent at what they do, and they can be very effective if used correctly. Next up, we have water boys. We have the Marines. Marines are a unit that used to be so much more effective before one of the updates Dorado did, when they gave every island a port. A lot of smaller islands and other provinces used to not have ports in the game, which meant that you were obligated to go for airborne or naval-based infantry to conquer those islands. Now, every island pretty much can be conquered by any sort of infantry, and so they have been a little bit, useful reduction. Sorry, I could not even find the words there, my gosh. But overall, actually what they do well is really what comes from their buffs. Obviously, you want to land these things with amphibious armored vehicles. They're going to be very good when landing with them because they can conquer territory, and they're supported really good by the vehicles because they can both land without ports, and the vehicles will cover the naval infantry where they do not do very well, such as jungles and mountains. Where naval infantry do well, however, is cities. They do 50% plus attack in cities and suburbs, which means they're very great for conquering cities, especially coastal cities, which means that they're going to be very effective at taking island nations and coastal cities and taking beachheads for you to build airports at and immobilize your other forces that cannot dock on non-port areas. Naval Marines also get a huge hit point increase compared to other infantry, though not as big as the Mechanized Infantry, but they're very good at what they do. They don't get a ranged attack. They don't get, I think, that much of an enemy aircraft damage. But again, what they do well is they do well in taking cities and storming cities, especially with armored support, and they can be very good at disrupting enemy lines and taking enemy cities on island nations and coastlines. I'm going to put these at a B tier because sadly their usefulness has been somewhat reduced because of the island rework, but they are still a very good unit to go for in my opinion, and I would say don't slack on the naval marines. Next up has to be one of the most used armored units in this game, I think, ever. It's going to be the MBT. Now, when has there been a pub match really where you haven't seen MBTs at least used by one player? Come on. You know you're lying if you say you haven't. Really, I would say that MBTs are used pretty much everywhere. And it kind of shows for how easy they are to use. They're a very new player friendly unit because they have high hit points. They do pretty much the same damage to armored and soft targets. But really when you look down in depth at what the unit's capabilities are and what the limitations are, you really start to see some very negative things about the tank. The MBT cannot be ferried by air until level 6 or the 3rd tech level, which means it's very non-maneuverable, it's not flexible, it's hard to get places, and it's slow. It also gets probably the most debuffs of most units in the game. It gets debuffed in forests, cities, jungles, mountains, so many places, especially in the early levels, that you basically have to get max level just to not get a debuff in cities. It's just that bad. And MBTs also barely have any defense against enemy aircraft. They can only do some to helicopters, but they have no defense whatsoever against jets. The biggest thing they have going for them is their large amount of hit points and their decent melee damage against soft and hard targets. So really one of these units is going to be one that you want to use as a beginner because again, they're very beginner friendly. And you're not really going to want to use them unless you're using them for a specific strategy like eating up and soaking up damage from artillery or jets so that your more important units like your support units and artillery can pave the way for an assault. And really they can do that really nicely as long as you use them correctly, set up some anti-aircraft near them, artillery behind them, and you can have a very nice spearhead going. Sadly, I'm going to have the MBTs going into a D tier because in my opinion they're just not that useful and they can be very lackluster because obviously if you just use MBTs in infantry you're going to get countered by almost everything, but they're very player friendly, so I might actually put them at a C tier because of just how user friendly they actually are. Our next unit that we're going to be going over is going to be the Mechanized Infantry. The Mechanized Infantry is one of the tankiest infantries in the game because it has the most hit points out of any other infantry unit in the game. It's meant to pair up with armor because of its hit points and also the damage it does. It does very similar attack damage like armored units would, and it has similar buffs like buffs in desert and buffs in open terrain. And really it will reduce the direct damage going into armor, and they also have very good anti-aircraft damage, I think 3 or 4 to jets and as well as helicopters, so they're very deadly. If you keep hitting them multiple times and there's a lot of them, you can do a decent amount of anti-aircraft damage. They don't have a ranged attack, obviously like most infantry. The only infantry that does is one that we'll be getting to in a little bit. And what they're mainly good for, especially in the European doctrine, is for an all-out melee assault. I think mechanized, one of the best strategies to use them in will be mechanized, AFEs or MBTs, and mobile anti-aircraft units. This stack would be really good because you have infantry that's tanky and can take land, you have armor that can do decent damage to infantry and armor that has a lot of tanky hit points as well and can eat up a lot of damage, and you have the anti-aircraft that can not only engage ground targets but also enemy aircraft as well as helicopters. And really that would be an overall great strategy for these things. They're good to be tanky and just soak up damage that other infantry wouldn't normally be able to take. They are pretty much almost about double the hit points of most infantry in the game. I would say these are a solid B tier because like Marines, they have very good bonuses and ways you can use them that just benefit the player who is using them correctly, and even a player who doesn't know how to use them too well, you still have a very nice high hit point unit that can do decent damage to ground and air units as well. Next up is one of my personal favorites in the game. It's going to be the mobile anti-aircraft unit. Now, I'm just going to say it now. I think this thing only has a couple real weaknesses, those being that it lacks radar to detect air units and that the radius is a bit smaller. But if it had those two things, it would be completely overpowered, because this anti-aircraft unit attacks helicopters and planes for decent damage. A max level European Doctrine mobile anti-aircraft vehicle can do 11 damage to helicopters and 7 to jets. Now, 7 to jets isn't that bad. It is a lot of damage, and you can do 5 to infantry and I think 2 or 3 to tanks. It's just good at doing whatever it wants to do, and it also has 2 attack and defense against missiles. It just is able to hit everything. It has 50 range, which is not that bad, and it can really save you from almost any air unit, or at least retaliate against any air assault. And it can also air assault to locations where you need them the most. It acts as armor, so it can soak up some damage, and in emergencies, like I said, you can air assault to a city you might be about to lose, and you can hold off just for that last minute air support to come in and hold the city off for you. So overall, these are an easy S tier for me because of how flexible they are, and even new players can just do so well with these because of how much they can hit at one time. There aren't many things this thing can't do. So guys, I really hope you enjoyed the video. I am enjoying making this series so far, and obviously it's ended up being more parts than I thought it would be, but we've come this far. So guys, if you enjoy the channel or enjoy this video, please consider subscribing. It really helps me out, and it's the single biggest thing that helps my channel grow and thrive. If you guys liked the video, leave a like. If you guys disliked it, leave a dislike. And in the comments, if you want to write why you liked or disliked it, feel free to do so. If you have a question or you just want to say hi, you can also do that. I try to react and respond to as many as I can, and if I haven't yet, I will get to it later. So guys, I hope you have a beautiful day. Stay tuned for the future parts. Nick out.